are live. Well, live recorded. So, Chrissy Newton, who are you and what do you do?
I am a writer and podcaster and TV host, but first and foremost, I started as a podcaster and moved into a writer. I write for The Debrief, which is a science and technology news outlet that's really read around the world, but mainly in North America and in Europe. I host a show on Discovery Channel called Alien Encounters Fact or Fiction. And I've been podcasting for about 4 years with my podcast, Rebelliously Curious with Chrissy Newton, that focuses on futurism, science, and UFOs.
I love the
Um,
name.
Thank you. It's
Yeah.
true though. I am like superly like everyone. Superly is not even a word. I am very excited when it comes to about science and technology. So,
Yeah.
I'm an average person. I would say average Jane, just looking for answers and just curious and want to learn more and always want to grow and learn. So that's what that podcast is really about:
Yeah.
interviewing experts and finding, really selfishly sometimes just asking questions I want to know that my listeners or viewers want to know, and finding out and discovering with everybody.
Absolutely. And I've listened to a few episodes as well and listened, and I thought it was great. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
I think what's awesome about it is that it gives you a perspective, well, for Americans, because we're ridiculous a lot of times. But anyway, when it comes down to that, we aren't real good at looking outward at the rest of the world. And I feel like just even as a gateway, the even just the Instagram kind of opens people's eyes to like facts like, and I reposted it today, I think, but it was that, do you even realize China has a space station and the national security implications with that and just everything? And we just don't know as
Well, we kicked
Americans.
them out of our space station.
Right.
I would say us as Canadian, I'm Canadian, but North American based, because we
Right.
do contribute a lot with our space program and robotics to NASA and to many different other space programs. But yeah, we kicked them out because of national security
Right.
issues we thought we had. So they went and built their own Apple-looking store space station, and it's beautiful. Like
It
it
is.
really is. It's gorgeous inside. Like it looks so high tech. It looks like you've walked into an Apple store.
Yeah.
So they're out there competing along with India and Russia and all of the larger countries and our foreign adversaries are competing in a space race right now that isn't always spoken about, maybe within our communities, but I think in
Yeah.
the larger scheme of things, I think we forget that it is a space race because it's been so commercialized.
Absolutely. For sure. Yeah, there's a few space stations out there. I just don't think people understand that.
And there's so many different space programs. Kenya has a space
Yeah.
program. A lot of people didn't know that, but to be honest, I don't blame people for not knowing. Like this is my job, is to find
Yeah.
out those things and to write about it. And I'm looking at stuff every day, so that's why. But if I wasn't, I'd probably be along with everybody else,
Yeah.
finding out those little info nuggets. That's why sometimes I put it on Twitter because I even find it so interesting. Like for example, the day before they go, the Chinese government, but before they even announce, they'll say there is a space mission, but they won't announce the astronauts until a day before they go, which I think is like really interesting, and that's tradition. And I haven't dug in why that's tradition, and maybe I should for another piece, but I think it's so interesting. I
Yeah.
love watching what China does. It's fascinating to
Yeah.
me.
I don't, yeah, I do it quite often. I have another podcast that's a national security podcast. So
Cool.
I get, I absorb a bunch of that. So, um, but with that being said, so I always ask this, every guest I've ever had is, what is your gateway to this world? Like, whether it's cryptid encounters, UFO encounters, just, anything.
It's my gateway to it,
Yeah.
or
Like meaning like your, like how you really got into the high,
yeah,
this genre. That's
yeah.
what I'll call it.
No, fair enough. I think I'm always been curious, but when I was a little girl, my dad showed me a picture of a UFO that he took with a group of people when he had a group sighting. And I remember looking at that photo and being so curious, and it like lit up everything inside of me and wanting to know what it was and trying to understand it and how could this be and what does that mean? And even at just such a young age, so curious. And my dad said, Chrissy, like, you won't understand until you get older. And I remember thinking, like, but I want to know now. Like, I don't understand what this means. And the photo was very artistic, the way that it looked. And I need to get, it was, a negative. And so I have to be able to, we have that negative in my dad's safe, and I'm going to blow it up at one day, when he gives it to me, and I'll
Someday,
be able
right?
to, yeah. And I'll make it into an art piece. And we've been chatting about that now. I have some other
Wow.
things that he's given me that he's collected over the years, related to UFO, stuff, and, or artifacts or things like that.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
awesome.
yeah, or just, like government paperwork that we weren't sure if it was real or not, like all of those things. So my dad really was my gateway to it, and his curiosity and fascination. And just, my parents are just really normal Canadians that, are very curious, love to travel, love history, love science. My mom was interested in neurology, and she was a social worker. It kind of makes sense at times. And she
Yeah.
wanted to learn how her brain operated and why it did. And I remember her telling me things when I was a kid, and then us traveling together as a family. So really just super curious family that loves to learn and really likes to talk, uh, and debate, and are very opinionated in many ways. So I think good or bad,
Yeah, I get
um,
it.
right. And that's who we are. And we do love to tell stories. Like my mom and all of us are really great storytellers. And my dad is specifically. So that's where it all came from. And never thought I would be here now, but I really do think things happen for a reason. And my passion as a child for many different things are happening now, in my 40s, um, more than they would have happened in my 20s, because I think I'm maybe ready for these conversations and have a little bit more insight on life than I obviously did in my 20s.
Right. So, have you had any uh, encounters yourself?
I've had experience.
Experiences?
Yeah, I've had experiences with high strangeness, with my dad in our house, and with somebody else as well too. But, and something I still can't explain, but it wasn't UAP related. I'd probably say it was more ghost phenomena.
Right.
And I've been, asking people in that community a little bit, like, what is this? So, and then, I think I've had something else with my ex-boyfriend, but I believe that was probably more atmospheric than anything else. And it was super cool. But seeing it in the sky. So yeah, it technically was a UFO, but how do we define UFO? I don't know if it was off planet or
Yeah.
what it was. Right. And that is the challenge, but it was unidentified, but I think it was atmospheric the way that it was flying in. It had like, didn't even have a smoke trail, but it had
Hmm.
like a burning orb at the back of it. Sorry, it did have a smoke trail, my fault, but it was very, very tiny. It wasn't long, and it was moving ever so slowly, but it had like a little, look like a little fireball at the end of it.
Hmm.
And so for me, when I kept looking at it, and I was pointing it to, now an ex, but I was pointing it to my boyfriend at the time, and I was like, "What is that?" Um, and we were staring at it, and go figure, you don't have your phone to be able to record it.
Of course.
Right? It's like a backyard UFO, and you're more like, in that whole moment when you see something, you're so puzzled, and your brain is trying to figure out what it is, and then you end up in those moments trying to put what is reality together. You end up
Hmm.
missing those moments to film it.
For sure. Agreed. Um, Now, what besides that? So, how did your like professional career? Where did it start, and like how did you get where you're at?
Yeah, for sure. So really it started, I've worked in public relations before journalism and podcasting and hosting, for about, gosh, 17 years. I ran a PR agency that worked in entertainment, lifestyle, business, philanthropy. The only thing I haven't done is government relations, funny enough. Maybe one day still, who knows?
You never know, right?
Right, you never know. I do find it interesting. And, so there's been many different areas. And when 2017 hit with Lou Elizondo, people were, talking about it, and people within the UFO space in Canada and Toronto were like, Chrissy, you can help, like you can do something, because you're a PR person. And I was just like, before that, previously I was asked, and I said, I will get blacklisted from media. I said, I can't, I have people that work for me. I got to survive, got to pay my own mortgage. And so I couldn't. But when 2017 hit, I was like, you know what? it's shifted. It's in the mainstream narrative. I can contribute meaningfully now without feeling a form of ridicule that I would not be able to work and keep my livelihood. So I started doing that. I started contributing, and then learning more, meeting people. And then what ended up happening is the debrief opened up. And I remember going, who the heck are these guys? Like, I've never heard of this outlet before. And so I asked friends that knew of them and knew them, Tim McMillan, MJ Benias, Christopher Plain, and Micah Hanks. And we're like, yeah, we'll connect you. And started talking to them and started podcasting with them and working on the YouTube side of stuff. And then, they asked me later on, would you become a partner? And I said, yeah, for sure. But trying to contribute in many ways. I've been very fortunate to work with Jacques Vallée on 2 of his books doing PR, still currently, and also just being able to write and do things I really love, and expressing that side of me that I've always always wanted to do. And so really podcasting is what brought me into it, but public relations was my initial first leap, and they're all interconnected in so many ways.
Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So because there's a border, obviously, Canada and the US, but I don't think we down here, again, looking outward, don't talk much about the fact that programs that we have, a lot of times you guys up there have like a cousin, sister, brother program, right? So like, like Project Magnet, things like that.
Yeah, Project Magnet was based more on magnetism,
Right.
and looking at UFOs from a magnetism science perspective and more of a science perspective. And
Right.
then we had Project Second Story that was more from a national defense. But we do mirror a lot of those programs. It's probably smart that, and I shouldn't say probably, it is smart that we do that because we are sistering countries compared to what people might want to debate now.
Yeah, right.
That might change again in 4 years. Let's see. But we are, and we do share a lot of information with each other. We have defended each other and have collaborated with each other within our science and defense communities for years. Fun fact, I never knew this, and I would have to double check it, but my best friend of mine, Marie Nicola, said to me, I was driving back from Ottawa, which is our capital in Canada and where our parliament is. And she's like, did you know that the Canadian Armed Forces and our Canadian soldiers train American soldiers because we are some of the best in combat in the world? And I went, what? I was like, I didn't, I follow a lot of American national security and defense. And sometimes I forget to follow our own Canadian at times. And she was looking it up and she said, yeah, because, we're both females that really like this topic. And we were chatting about it in the car driving back. And I said, that's wild. And then we were talking about how Canada is really prepared for any terrain, any type of combat. And I think it's fascinating. But with that said, yeah, we have lots of programs. And the program we have now is Sky Canada Project, and that's coming out of the Chief Science Advisor and Chief Science Office within Ottawa. And I actually met with them recently. This past weekend, I met with them to learn a little bit more about the whole team and what they're looking at. But Canada really looks at UFOs and even just science and all of our topics from a very slow, but also very progressive perspective. We're not always fast to the go to make a decision. We sit back and analyze. Sometimes that's great, and sometimes it's not. And so I think within the UFO topic, we have always looked at this from an academic science perspective, and we've always taken it seriously to a degree, and we've kept our UFO records open for the public to be able to see and analyze. So there's many reasons for that, but I would say that we do take science in national security, all of it, sometimes a little bit slower, but that can be positive as well. And that's why we work together so well, because we share information.
For sure. Agreed. Yeah. So how did the TV show come about? How did that happen? And well, I'll go with I got another question after that, but I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, a friend, a couple producers have looked at my work. I was in about like 10 other show pilots for the longest period of time, which I'm very grateful to even be considered. And a lot of those things don't happen all the time. You could be in part of that stuff for your whole career and nothing ever happens. So when I was asked to audition for this, I said, for sure. But I really try to come at things from a science perspective because that's my job in journalism and I don't want to lead people on. And if I report something not accurate, then I will re-report. Like that's we're human. I can't know everything.
Right.
And so, right. And I don't really want to. The whole point about being human is learning and being
Yeah.
alive and making mistakes. But if it is a severe mistake, for sure, we don't want to mislead people. So my job is very different, I think, than obviously Mitch Horowitz on the show. And to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan. I can't control how they edit things and stuff like that. And, maybe a little bit more clinical than I am. But, it's TV, right? And that's the part
Yeah.
that there's an element of it that is obviously who I am and very much who I am. And then there's another part that very much is just television related. So when people, see me on my social media, I laugh when they watch the show because like she's very clinical. But when they see me on my social media, they'll be like, she's just a big Care Bear and a
Wait,
goofball.
she's not
No,
clinical.
no, I'm trying to be more accurate and I will be skeptical, but I am not that clinical. I am a big Care Bear that loves this topic and wants to do the right thing. Like I think most people that are trying to be in this topic and reporting. And so that's it. And I also like to have fun. Like I am actually generally funny, for what I've been told. So I'm like, I like to show that side of me, but TV's TV, right? Maybe one day I'll get to show the other side.
Yeah, it's what they make of it for sure.
Exactly. And I can't control it because I'm just talent on it. I'm not a producer.
Right.
Yeah. But I am
Exactly.
grateful for the experience because I learned a lot very fast doing that show when it comes to TV and TV land in Hollywood, goods and bads. But yeah, it was really wonderful. And the crew on the show was unbelievable. The crew was really wonderful and just really, really lovely and very professional.
Awesome. Yeah. Um, what is your favorite thing from that? Like because you guys did a lot of investigation and went over a lot of territory. What was one of the standout things for you with like encounters or investigations that hit you?
Yeah, there was a transmedium UFO that I thought was really super cool. And the reason why I say that is, we have the 5 observables that came from the Pentagon,
Hmm.
looking at classification of identifying a UFO. And transmedium is one of them. So if people don't know, a transmedium is something that can go into the water, it can go into the atmosphere, and it can go into space. So what we saw there was, and it doesn't mean that drones have been able to do this. We have transmedium drones now. China has specifically shown the capabilities of that. And I imagine North America does as well too. But and I think it was about 4 years ago or 3 years ago when China showed that capability. But with that said, this was off Catalina Island, which is a hotspot for UFOs, and it was a seaman that was out there with his partner. She was actually on the land, and he was on the boat. And then we had the Coast Guard as well that ended up seeing something. So we had this triangulation of Coast Guard identification, a person, his partner calling him on the boat and saying, what is above you? Like, what is this thing?
It's
Right.
crazy.
And then
Yeah.
it's wild. And then him going, yeah, I'm filming it and I'm looking at this. And he saw it come out of the water and into the sky. And it was a triangle UFO and unbelievable. It was bigger than the size of a car, I believe he said. I think that's from it's been almost a year now.
Yeah.
Geez, that went fast. Crazy. Right.
It is
Now I think,
crazy.
yeah, geez, I haven't thought about
Almost
that
like we
yet.
slipped or something. I'm just saying.
Uh,
It's
It's
you never
so
know.
wild how time flies by now. So when I interviewed him, there were so many things that hit the marks of just triangulation of identification, 3 different people, different groups, Coast Guard groups, along with then looking at the data in the back end and finding that there was only low blow explosions that were coming from like off the water when they were doing some type of testing with the Coast Guard. But there was nothing in the sky. There was no flares in the sky, nothing like that. That was identified right from the Coast Guard. So just low barge explosions. And that really does speak volumes, right? You wouldn't see it above him. So it was wild. And he is a really great witness because he's on the sea. He's been on the water. He lives on the water. That is his job. So amazing testimony, one of the best people to testify, along with then having the identification of being on the island and seeing it above him. So again, it could be American tech. Don't get me wrong, but it really, if it is, gosh, we've got great tech. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable the stuff
Right.
we've got out there. But with that said, it isn't an UFO, and we just don't know where it is or where it's coming from in that regard. But it was brilliant, and I love it, and it's one of my favorite stories to date.
Yeah. Um, so you, on the podcast, the debrief podcast, what exactly do you cover overall? Like what's the focus?
Yeah, I talk to academics. So, mainly academics within the UFO science space. And I do a lot of intersections of culture too. So, I've been doing a little bit of a series with theologians, funny enough, not intentionally, just because I find it very interesting. And I've spoken with two different theologians recently, and people that work in the sciences as well, and astrophysics to be exact. But I have a new one coming out this Friday. But Ted Peters was someone else that was working with Arizona State and the Vatican and creating a guideline and for the Pope. And it wasn't, I believe it was the Pope before Pope Francis, to be able to create a guideline about how theology should potentially look and evolve and progress with science. And so I found out something really interesting too in this little nugget, that I had no idea that the state, Arizona State, was working with the Vatican. I was like, that's
It's
cool.
crazy, right?
Right? Like, out of all of the academic
Arizona State
institutions,
for all.
Arizona State. I was like, no offense, Arizona State. I've seen you. I've been around your campus. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But and there actually is a lot of great stuff I've seen that comes out of Arizona State, just from political,
Yeah.
sorry, from science papers and stuff that have come out. But yeah, and so I was like, oh, that's interesting, and created these guidelines. And he was talking about that, and going to working with the Pope and working with the Vatican in Arizona State, and has really been a forefront and a leader in this space. So I think there's a lot of this misnomers from the atheist community that, theologians would never look at extraterrestrials, and the Vatican and Catholic religion want nothing to do with science. Like, it's so not accurate, and it's so
Yeah.
ignorant. And it's not for me preaching religion, because I've looked at multiple religions, but theology is very interesting because it is very connected into the metaphysical. And so I've been having conversations with Reverend David Wilkinson recently that will come out. And we talk about the intersections of culture and science, and how we look at materialism being like kind of nuts and bolts science, a better way to saying it, and how metaphysics science was never really considered to be something that we should take it seriously.
Yeah.
Right. And
Right.
and now
And
that's changing, and we're seeing that these two worlds are really coming together within the science community. So
mhm.
it's fun. And outside of that, I've talked to people from political side: Christopher Mellon, Lou Elizondo, Leslie Kane, Ralph Blumenthal, multiple people within the UFO space, about UFOs and what's going on politically, with culture related, what's even happening within China and their UFO team and task force as well that they have. So, and who knows, that could be also be a propaganda move like we did. But there's so many interesting stories now with the intersections of culture and science, and I deeply love both. So I feel very lucky I get to do it, and selfishly I get to learn.
Yeah. I think um, a lot of folks or theologians, especially, realize that the deeper they get into the science, a lot of folks believe that the more it proves their point, right? Like the supernatural or or the existence of God. I think a lot of folks think that the deeper science goes, the more that that's proven. So I mean, it just makes sense after all said and done that we intersect everything because it's all connected, whether we like it or not. I feel like it's connected. Just like I do. So a lot of folks believe that UFOs and the supernatural side of that are all connected. Paranormal. If you really think about it, it's all connected. So
It
uh,
is. And Reverend David Wilkinson was really interesting to speak with, because he makes a really great point about materialistic science. And, we have all these theories, and we look at science where we have evidence and proof within science that these things work, and even just how the human body works and biology. But it's interesting because he made a really great point and says that we have all these things that can prove, or theories of how the universe started. But really, then our metaphysical question is like, well, what was kind of before the Big Bang? What was that? Who created it? Like, that is a metaphysical conversation. So science does have to lean into that more and more and more to be able to answer those questions. And so I think in the end of it, or maybe the beginning of it, of how you want to view it in your research, it does intersect because of the question of why and how is always consistently there. And it's so fascinating. And I think that the average person sometimes feels that science and STEM, mathematics and engineering and all of that is just so not tangible for them if they're not trained in that space. And that's actually not accurate whatsoever. You know, a lot of people ask me, and it's so funny, Sky Canada Project asked me the same thing. They're like, you write about fusion and you write about all these things. Do you have a science background? And I said, no, I have a communications background. I just enjoy this topic. And for the longest period of time, I didn't think I was smart enough to do it. And that's actually not true. And I want to tell that to other people and say, hey, I'm an average person. I'm an average woman that enjoys these topics. And I'm learning and open to learning and just coming up with new ideas, connecting new ideas, but communicating it for other people. And I feel that that's whatever, because it is approachable and it's not
Yeah,
not approachable. And we have to make science approachable for people to feel like they're part of it.
absolutely. Agreed. Yeah. And it just the intersect, especially with the quantum side of things, the advancements that we've done there, I think it opens up the whole idea that the metaphysical stuff has validity even more. So,
It's true. And it's funny because materialist scientists will say, and I've said the same thing. Well, we look at quantum physics and there's nothing to do with that. And I'm like, I don't know. Like,
if
you
I
can't
believe
just
that.
say that.
Yeah.
And I've had debates. It's funny. I was the most random thing. I was talking to a guy on a dating app, like probably like 7 years ago before I started doing this, or 6 years ago or something like that. And he was debating me on it. And he was just like, he was a total atheist, doesn't, and I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, well, and we were sending stuff back and forth to each other. And I remember thinking, well, first of all, this isn't going to work out because you're not open minded enough for me
Right.
to ask more questions and be curious. And you just pretty much were like, you're wrong. And
Oof.
nobody, yeah, it was just bad taste.
It's brutal.
Uh, it was, but that really opened up my mind. And he was smart. He was a very smart man. I forget what area of business he was in, but he was very smart. Uh, but not open minded and was
Mm-hmm.
literally like, this isn't possible. It doesn't exist. And here we'll tell you why. And here's a whole bunch of materialist sciences that will tell you that.
Yeah.
And scientists will debate me now, but hey, we thought germs weren't real and a lot of people died.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the
And a lot of
truth.
people still think germs aren't real.
Exactly. So, we don't know what we don't know yet.
Right.
And that's the best part of being alive is that we get to figure it out. And
Right.
well, and hopefully I get to report on it consistently. It's supposed
Yeah.
to
I
be
mean, people
fun. We got
think
to
the
make it
world's
fun.
flat too. So,
Right. No,
you
and
know,
it's true. It's true. But we do have to make it fun. We
yes,
only
for
here for
sure.
so long. Let's try and make it fun as much as
Yeah.
possible.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's some valid points that they make, but I just can't. I can't. I don't, can't go there. Yeah. I'm declaring myself as a round earther, I guess. um,
I'm
uh,
not going there.
yeah, no, exactly. So, with that being said, what are your, what is your investigative brain told you? What do you think is going on here? And I'm not naive or dumb enough to think it's one thing. And it could be just a whole ton of things. But what do you think is going on with UFOs? Now, and of course, there's all kinds of UFO, UAP, UA. There's so many different acronyms now. But
Yeah.
what do you have fun with that?
Yeah. Oh, I will. I My evolution process of what I thought has been happening since I was a girl and obviously to an adult woman that's reporting on this really started. Pop culture was a big aspect that did, I shouldn't say probably, that did influence my opinions. And as I started to become deeper and deeper, and really told myself in my 20s, I'm going to know who these people are. I'm going to go to conferences and I'm going to lean in and I'm going to learn. And over the course of the time, it has immensely changed working at the debrief, reading more science papers, being around these people, talking to people in politics, seeing people's perspectives. So I don't know what's going on, first of all, and my opinion really doesn't matter. But if you want to hear it, I feel that my perspective, if it is aliens, I feel that might not be as accurate. Doesn't mean I'm doesn't mean those people that think that are wrong. And it also, I do believe it's multiple things. I lean more into the interdimensional aspect of things, because I feel that there is something going on within this space, within world, in our space and time, that we really don't know about within our own dimensions, and we will learn more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, learning, and I write so much about neurology within the debrief because I find it so fascinating. I follow a lot of stuff with the Neuralink and what's going on with competitor companies and brain interface chips. And so I feel that at some point in time, we have not evolved yet to really understand it or to see it. And it's like any animal or any evolution. I think that we will get there at one point. It could be part of technology that we evolve, is transhumanism, which I know a lot of people don't like. But then there's also this part of like normal general evolution of self, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where those intersect is going to be a time that I think you and I will be watching and seeing where humanity decides to go
Agreed.
with these conversations. And this is why I love these intersections of culture and science, because the choices that we make today will reflect what our future does look like, right? And the choices that we make today with advanced technology will be decisions on how we perceive our own reality. And so, and the more that we learn about consciousness, right? And so, and the more we learn about our brain, and the way that we learn about how people think and the differences between the differences of how we think is really very important. And it's very nuanced, but it is important. And I do feel that, and I was saying this earlier in an interview, that I feel at one point when we get to really understanding the brain and consciousness, when we see how people think differently or how they perceive the world from a biological perspective and a neurological perspective, then that might be a way that we understand each other better. And that's what I truly think,
Yeah.
because our brains process information differently. And so understanding how someone's brain works and how they process information from a sensory perspective, from just any perspective, a trauma perspective,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we have a better understanding of how to relate to each other and how to speak to each other. And I really think that neurology is, with it's obviously attached to consciousness and understanding that, but I do think neurology is our gateway to being able to lean in and understand each other more. And that's why I write about it so much, because I think it's fascinating. I want to know how people's brains work, because it makes me understand how they interact in the world so that I can empathize or talk to them or be able to say, well, that's why you experience it like that. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean you're wrong. It just means that you see this and feel it differently than I do.
Yeah, for sure. Because, two people, same situation, same exact sightings, they'll give you two different stories almost every time.
Well, and I've been in those situations where people have seen, we've had different perceptions on how we view reality or experiences, or
Mm-hmm.
even how we treat each other, and how someone might speak to somebody and they feel that they're not being spoken to the right way because of their own experiences. So when I look at that and I go back even to obviously psychology, but we go back to how the brain processes information, it's fascinating. Maybe in another life I'll go to school for
Right,
neurology.
right. Sometimes I believe a lot of these things are also, I, I've got a background in behavioral science, so
Nice.
I see a lot of, and it's hyperbolic saying, but like mass psychosis. Um,
Interesting.
I feel like a lot of these things, especially with social media the way it is now, was never that way when I was a kid. But you get this sort of like collective think, right? Which also can be mass psychosis, and depending on the thing, so, or the topic. So I'm just, it's a great point that you bring up, that, and how we connect outside of that too. Um, and whatnot even on a, like, do we have a collective, right, energy? Of course, I think we do, obviously. But what are your thoughts on that?
I,
On how
I
we
was
really affect how we,
You
uh,
were, well, I think we were collectively thinking the same thing because
yeah,
that's what I was just thinking. I laugh because, again, my best friend jokes around because I was like, listen to the telepathy tapes. And we spend a lot of time together because she's like one of
yeah,
my closest friends and we like the same things. And we were laughing because at the same moment, we're at the Science and Technology Museum in Ottawa. And at the moment, I look down and turn on my Wi-Fi, I connect to the Wi-Fi, and I said, "Oh, there's free Wi-Fi here. She connect it." She's like, "I'm literally doing it at the same time you are." And I laughed. She's like, "Kim," she's like, "I think we met on the hill." And we have this joke if you're listening to the telepathy tapes. She'll always say, "Let's meet on the hill, Chrissy," because we are trapped in each other's minds many times. Like we'll show up wearing the same clothes.
yeah,
Like we've shown
right,
up wearing the same bathing suit and like not even knowing we have each other's bathing suit or similar
right,
design. So we've done so many things that have interconnected us because our energies are so similar and the things that
hmm,
we like and the way that we radiate. And so I do truly believe there is a collective out there. And it just depends on how close that person is to you, how much time you've spent to them, might be the experiences. There could be many other reasons, but I
yeah,
do believe that. It's funny because somebody right now messaged me and said, wants to book a guest that I had on my show. And I said, yeah, I don't mind doing an introduction. And I said, but sometimes they're challenging, they're a little tricky to get on the show. And I just said to them, I was like, but don't kill my story lead. And they were like, what? And I was like, I know how this game works. Collectively, if we're all thinking the same thing, someone's going to steal my story lead
yeah,
because I'm working on something else. And I was like, and it might seem a little defensive, but I was like, I know this community. And if I'm collectively working on this and
yeah,
thinking about it, so it literally pushed me into high gear yesterday to start making some other phone calls because I was like, all right, if this is starting to happen and I've already interviewed this person, it's going to pick up like wildfire and I better get
right,
my butt moving because I do think it's a thing. It
yeah.
really is.
I would
Yeah.
agree. You find, well, in the podcast world, I mean, that all of a sudden it's just like, you get these flashes of things like, I'm just trying to think of stuff that hit, like the prophecy of the popes, like last week. Stuff like that just hits because, and everybody gets a little bit of groupthink. No, that one's not a good example. That's a horrible example. I don't know why I'm giving that because the Pope just died.
Poor Pope. I know.
But those types of things as trends because a lot of us talk behind the scenes. It's just like you're saying. I've been researching this, and then it'll click in somebody else's head, and then the next thing you know, it's down
Yeah,
the
and then
road.
and then you miss all the leads or things that you've been thinking about. And I was like, I better go do that. Like what they say about greatness, there's lots of people that are way better at their job than the people that are in the forefront of it. But unfortunately, those people have not excelled because they keep, they don't try. And there's a big
Yeah,
part of that. So the people that are trying and learning and go out there and just do it on the whim, sometimes they're getting that lead because they're just doing it. And there's a big part to that. And they're picking up on it. So they go and do it. And, no fault to them. I just don't want them to take my story lead.
get off my story.
Get off my story lead. It must have been like a text message. I was on a phone and I was like, you're not taking my story
Get
lead, are
off
you?
my story.
Oh, I wrote, don't, you're not taking my story lead, are you? And they must have been like, Chrissy is so defensive right now. And then I had to call them because I was like, hey, sorry, I'm on a phone call right now and I've got 20 people messaging me. Well, it's fine. I've got like two other people messaging me and I'm trying to record this call for another article I'm working on. And I was like, but I told them about where I was doing with the story. And I was like, don't take my story lead. They're like, it's okay. They're like, what's the rules that I go by? And I was like, there's no rules. I'm like, I'm not controlling. I'm just please don't take my story lead because I've been working on it. So
Yeah.
it pushed me into high gear to start. So I made some phone calls last
No
night to
procrastination now.
no, it pushed me into high gear to be like, make those phone calls and just get it out there and start doing what you're supposed to be doing for this article
Yes,
piece.
for sure. Yep. I know all about it. Yeah, my wife was just in Ottawa,
Oh,
actually.
nice.
Or wait, Quebec.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that's yeah,
Well, it's
close
the
enough.
same. Yeah, yeah.
It's very close,
But
like a
either
hop,
way,
skip, and a jump. Yeah.
they went to some resort
Oh, did you
spa
go to
thing.
the
Nordic.
Nordic? It's so nice.
Yeah, she's
It's so
spoiled.
yeah.
It
Nordic is
was
like one of
good.
the nicest spas
Yeah,
that I've been to in Canada. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, there's probably
The
more in
stories
BC,
that
but
it was just great. Just the treatments and just the atmosphere. So they loved it. The food was really good too. So
oh,
yeah,
I haven't ate there. I've only I've gone in all the waters.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, places. Yeah, it's cool. Um, Also, it's one of my favorite times. Well, it's coming up here soon, but there's the Tulip Festival there.
Oh, no.
If you've never been, you got to
No.
go.
I do
The
like
whole
tulips.
city's tulips.
What? What city?
Quebec.
Oh, it's you mean that's the province, but like in
Or
Montreal or
Montreal. No, not Montreal. What's the other one? Ottawa.
oh, it's in Ottawa. I didn't
Yeah,
know it's in
it's in
Ottawa.
Ottawa. That's what I meant.
I did,
Not
yeah,
So
it's
it's
okay.
in Ottawa. The Tulip Festival, the whole city has got like, I don't know, like they're all from Holland, gifted from Holland and planted all over the city. So,
That's beautiful. I didn't know that. I have good friends of mine that live in Ottawa, so I'm there a lot. I went for the meeting, but it was selfishly also to go hang out with them too. So we're just like a group. We did a whole bunch of things. We went to the space and aerospace and space museum, which I
right.
100% recommend going to. It's unbelievable. The planes that I've seen from World War II, like the
Oh, yeah.
Lancaster bomber was in that. And it's huge. Like I lost my mind. And like I'm gonna post it on my Instagram today, but I had so much fun. Like I couldn't believe the amount of like history and also just the eeriness and the advancements in technology that we had. Like when we walked in, I felt like a little kid where I was like, oh my God, I don't know where to start because like this is unbelievable. From planes from like 1909
Yeah.
that we had first in Canada, all the way down to like, stuff that we're doing on the space station. Like it's
Hmm.
just, it's huge. So I recommend anyone to go because they'll have a blast. It doesn't matter what age you are, you'll love it.
In Ottawa.
In Ottawa, yeah.
Yeah.
Space and Aerospace Museum
Yeah.
or Aerospace
The one
and
at the
Space Museum.
Smithsonian's one of my favorite, especially when I was younger. It's one of my favorite places. Um, so I think that's the equivalent probably.
I
Um,
would imagine.
but yeah, the we rode around in the canal on the canals and just looked at tulips all day. It was amazing. So
Wow. It's
check
so
it out if
pretty.
you've never been there for it. It's
I
pretty awesome.
I will.
Um, so all right, with this podcast, I love um let me back up. So we've got what are your chances of, you said more of an interdimensional type of thing is what you lean that way. Would that be fair to say?
Hmm.
Now, with that being said, um, what, with all the research that you get, well, you do interviews and all the things, what are the experts? And I more the mainstream side, like what are they really thinking is going on? Like, what are like the top two or three uh, theories that you come across?
Yeah, I would say that extraterrestrial is still really up there when it comes to theories that people feel are going on. So extraterrestrial is one coming from space or some planet. The science, though, right now says that that's not possible, right? And
Right.
that's why a lot of other scientists don't agree. The other theory, I think, is number two is interdimensional, and that would be from Jacques Vallée's perspective as well.
Yeah.
Jacques Vallée is an amazing scientist and has worked for the government, did a classification, built the largest database for the American government called Capella, where that talked about UFOs and UFOs within collected UFO data. And he's also an astronomer. So I would say Jacques Vallée still obviously relates to the interdimensional, but I believe from when I've spoken to him that he thinks that we don't know what it really is yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so that theory is evolving. But I would say that's the second. And then I would say, I believe it's ultra terrestrial, that it's here. And that it's been on this planet for a very long time. And maybe we don't have the ability to see it or interact with it for some degree, for some reason. And that might be because of evolution. But
Yeah.
those are really still and those are consistent theories that have been going on since the 60s,
Yeah.
50s and the 60s, at least the 60s and the 70s. And they haven't changed that much. So, our science is picking up and we're learning more, but it's still within a very similar framework.
Right. So with like Sky Canada, do they have a reporting system now?
Well, first of all, it was a reference. What they did was give, suggestions on how to really create this
Right.
classification. So some of the recommendations were starting an app and then having the Canadian Space Agency look over it and be able to look and sort through this data. The reason why they're doing it is obviously a national security threat perspective, so that we learn more, but then keeping it open for the public and working with the Canadian Space Agency would keep it open rather than putting it under the Department of Defense within Canada. So that's one of it. Looking at understanding how to classify UAP. So that's really one of the major recommendations they're putting forward, to understand if it's atmospheric as well, and then being able to keep the data open for people to learn more. But it's not a study about finding out if they're aliens. It's more
Right.
about understanding how to classify and how to collect data, and who should be collecting the data. And they'll come out with another additional recommendations and tactical report, I believe, in the beginning of the summertime. So I'm waiting for them to send me that so I can write
Right.
about it.
How many sightings are Canadian? Like, how many Canadian sightings are reported every year?
Well, it's like 1 in 3 people or 1 in 4 people. About 2 years ago, I believe, CBC did a piece on this that saw a UFO or claim they saw a UFO.
Gotcha.
Again, doesn't mean that it's interdimensional or,
Right. Just
right.
a
But
UFO or
yeah, just
UAP
seeing
or whatever.
something, anomalous in the sky. So it's like 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 people, something to that degree. I remember seeing the stat. So that's a lot of people,
It
but it
is.
makes sense. Yeah. A lot of the UFOs that are identified come in Toronto, which makes sense because it's such a high population. Same with Vancouver, and along with the North too. The Arctic has a very high, the Northwest Territories has a
Mhm.
really high percentage, which is, and there's not a lot of people that live there, right? A very small amount of people and small population. So those are the highest areas of concentration.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of really old UFO stories that are really, really great, from Falcon Lake and Shag Harbor, that are like our Canadian Roswell
Yeah.
experiences, and they're unbelievable. Like Shag Harbor, a UFO crashed, and I'm gonna butcher the date. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but a UFO crashed in the water in Nova Scotia. And we don't know if it was coming out of the water or crashed into water specifically, but we believe that, or going into the water, because we weren't sure if it was transmedium or not. But there was a green foam that was on it, and people ended up seeing it. The RCMP was there. There was documentation that Americans were there, Canadians were there, people saw it locally. So, outside of Roswell, this has more documentation than Roswell even does.
Public information, at least, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then we also
um.
have a Toonie that has the Shag Harbor
Oh yeah.
crash on it, which now
Right.
is like so expensive to buy. I've looked at it and I think it's like at least $4,000, I think, to buy now.
Wow.
I know.
What was
And I
the other
missed my
one that
boat.
you said? The other.
Falcon Lake.
What is that?
So Falcon Lake was in Manitoba. Shikalak, I'm forgetting his name now. Geez, he was collecting rocks, I believe, and the shorter form that I again might butcher this a little bit, but he was looking around. He was hearing some people speak Swedish, he thought, or some type of like dialect. And
Hmm.
so when he walked around the corner, he heard it, and he thought it was just military, who knows? And he ends up seeing this craft, and like legitly, it was like whoop, like the door closed and everybody kind of went in. Like, what the heck? And so he went up closer to the craft, and it ended up like accelerating and ended up burning him. And we have the app profiles from the Lorenzens ended up keeping that documentation. And we have at New Fork, the National UFO Record Center in Albuquerque has, and people on my Instagram can go and see some videos on that. We have the glove. We also have the soil sample, and we also have a piece of his shirt, his
Wow.
shard shirt from that experience. So again, it could have been government testing of some type of craft that he ended up seeing people or hearing people speak English or some type of dialect. So that's totally possible that that was happening at the time, and then he ended up catching them. But yeah, it's a wild story, and we have lots of them. We have sightings in in Ottawa where somebody was swimming on a pool and literally like a glass top and saw a UFO fly over. And we were like in a pool on their back. Like, can you imagine swimming around
No.
and seeing that? Like, and then a reporter came and documented it. And so we do have lots. We have so many UFO stories as well, like the States.
Yeah. It's just, again, you hear sometimes we think the airwaves are open, but a lot of times they're just not, you know? So hearing things that are, just like different music, different things, we don't always hear all the stories either,
Right.
from either
Oh,
side. So,
makes sense. It's such a big world, even though we are tiny. It's a
right.
lot of information out there.
It's a huge world, and people, I think, live so small sometimes. So,
Good
you
way of
know,
saying it.
um, but, so you've been doing this a while, right? So with that being said, what do you think, what are some seeds, and this is why it's called broadcasting seeds that you can plant in people's minds that you think are important over the next few years coming forward with what's happening and the seriously the rush of information that we're getting is frankly to some, and sometimes to myself, overwhelming. So
Yeah, I would say don't believe everything you read or told.
yes,
People make mistakes, and sometimes they don't correct those mistakes. Some people like to mislead and deceive.
just let it coast, right?
Yeah. And then just like to put it in the ethos because they want to be a part of a nugget of
Right.
history. And there's lots of that. People being, embodied into history and known as someone who's done something great is actually stronger than you would imagine. Not for all, but for some. So I would say that if you find people that you really like and you feel that they're doing their best when it comes to reporting or telling those stories and really thinking skeptically and not as a skeptic, but are and not criticizing, but
Right.
are looking at this and saying, well, let's find some proof or looking at it from a very logical perspective, then keep those people close to you and that you follow. And like this can be in any topic, not just UFOs.
Right.
Because propaganda is a real thing and we have a lot of it today. And I think we forget sometimes that propaganda can be made within our own communities because of misinformation or propelling propaganda because they feel that it's true. So we have to just be really mindful because it's hard to believe what's real anymore. And if you find those people that
That's
you
the truth.
feel right, and if you feel that those people are doing their best work and they don't have agenda behind them, then I would stay close to those people and the work that they're doing because I think that those people will probably lead you down better paths than rather people that are leading with their ego.
Agreed. Considering where I'm sitting. Um,
Well,
so
I think there's so many of us that are trying to do our best. Like all
yeah.
of us are, but there's just some people that are out there that are not. There's so many great con artists. It's
Oh my
unbelievable.
gosh. Yeah.
Ugh, it's
There's so
crazy.
many, so
So
many.
many. Yeah.
Um, so parting words other than self promotion, which is next. Any,
Oh, parting words. Sorry. Um, I guess parting words would be just, yeah, stay curious, be open minded, and keep if you're scared to go do something, go do it. And science and technology and UFOs and all this is for everybody. We're on this planet to learn, have fun, experience things. And who cares what people think? Because in the end of it, we go in alone, we go out alone, do what you love, be who you are. If you feel that you're weird, go and live your best weird life, because we only have so much time on this planet, and surround yourself with people that love you and really actually care about you.
Agreed. Wholeheartedly. Tell us where we can find you.
For sure. On Instagram, it can be Being Chrissy Newton. That's a reference to Being John Malkovich, if anyone knows that film.
It's a good movie.
It's such a
very underrated movie, by the way.
It is. It's one of my favorites. Just love it. I love Michelle Gondry and Charlie Kaufman as writers and directors together. So Being Chrissy Newton, and then on X, it's Chrissy Newton, or you can go to my website, chrissynewton.com, and you can see my podcast there, my writing at the Debrief, which is thedebrief.org. And then they can go on Discovery Plus or HBO Max to watch Alien Encounters Fact or Fiction.
Yeah. What's your platform of choice? Like
Instagram? To watch?
Pretty
well. I think it just depends.
Where you like to live, where you work the most. You know what I mean?
I say Instagram for sure. I work the most. If you really want to see me and my quirkiness in my daily life, or just things I'm interested in, I think is cool. And just random humor at times. Occasional Muppets will show up because I do love the Muppets. Stuff like that. And like want to follow news stories that I'm writing. The Debrief is great. My Instagram is really great for that. But if you want to follow more UFO and science-based stuff, then you can go to my X account because I tweet more there.
Yeah,
that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I like to know these things sometimes. Because mine's Instagram too. Some people are like, no, it's TikTok or Facebook. I don't know how Facebook is anybody still, but whatever.
I know. I wonder that too.
Yeah.
I do see sometimes that because my Facebook is, because of Meta, is connected to my Instagram, or my Instagram is connected to Facebook. So I do see all the Facebook people that are still looking at my stories on Facebook. And I'm like, what are you doing?
It's still good.
What are you doing on this platform?
Like groups are good. The groups, I still feel like it's good for groups, but individual stuff,
Yeah, I enjoy Instagram, and I also don't like TikTok as much because I find it too much like a casino. Yeah, I'm like, it's like ding, 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 ding.
Instagram's visual too. It's nice. It's so
and it also is visual but audio too. But I do enjoy Twitter for community, like the UFO topic. I learn a lot of what's kind of just going on in the community through that because I follow so many people. And then in science, and then to have a nice debate. I put a poll up recently because we just went through our election of, do you vote, like when you vote, do you vote for yourself or do you vote for your community? And a good friend of mine, Adam, who was in Ottawa, made a comment when we sat down at his house with a friend of mine and said, most people vote for themselves. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. I guess I've never looked at it that way. So I was like, let's see what other people think. And it was interesting because it literally came back, I think, for yourself was like 48%. And then the highest was like 50 something, 52 or whatever that would be for voting for your community. But it was so close. I know, right?
Yeah.
So close, but interesting. And then it was like, you could technically vote for both. You can vote for yourself within your community. But mainly when you're prioritizing, do you prioritize your own needs or do you prioritize the needs of others around you is really what I was getting at. So it was interesting to see how people perceive that,
seemed kind of split that way, right?
It did, yeah, which makes kind of sense in the world that we live in, that I feel that it would be 50-50 to some degree in that debate. Yeah.
Agreed.
But I was happy to see that people were voting for others too, that they do keep others in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think we have to. We got to at least try. So.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you so much for coming on. And I'll put all your stuff in the show notes. And I really appreciate you coming on and talking.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
For sure.
Yeah, I got bad thoughts that make my mind scared. Hold me hostage and they don't fight fair. Who gon' pray for me and wipe on my tears? Who gon' save me if you not right here? Move this darkness and make my sight clear. Take me your way cause I don't like here. Ghosts of my past, they feeling the night air. Wake me up, I'm trapped in my nightmares. Apparitions of all my demons. All my thoughts are committing treason. All alone, who gon' hear me screaming? Manifestations of my fears. Regrets that stretched out for light years. Can almost touch the light, homie, it's right there. Body free but trapped in my nightmares. Wake me up, don't let me drown. All the lights are